Alright, so we are doing another tier list today, and this time I am here with NTDOSplat, aka Eseral, who will henceforth more than likely be referred to as Ian because of habits.
Hi.
And this is the test I was going to do, and it was long overdue for doing a tier list with another person, and we're just going to be doing a short one for the Animal Crossing games today. This will be one of the few ones that actually include a mobile game because, one, it's a short list, and B, it's got a bit more put into it than your average cheap mobile game or Chinese knockoff. But before we get into that, we will start with the original Animal Crossing, which, as some people will and won't know, is a enhanced port of the N64 game, which never made it out of Japan. And since you have more nostalgia and experience with the GameCube game, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
I mean, in general, it's just a lot of the foundings of what the series came to be. It's very much in regards to the customization aspects that a lot of people kind of like really adore New Horizons and New Leaf for. It's very bare in that regard, although you still have a decent amount of clothing, a decent amount of stuff to decorate your house with. But what it does really excel in, what makes it still really stand on top for me personally, is that the animal dialogue. Yeah, I would definitely, for me personally, would definitely be an S tier, because like the animal dialogue, which is like the whole thing that got me into Animal Crossing to begin with, was just how interesting the animals could be to interact with and talk to, how much of a real character they could feel like, each individual one. That just like that is done best in the original on the GameCube, in my opinion. A lot of the other games, especially when we see New Leaf and New Horizons, gets that dialogue gets watered down quite a lot, and then you end up very clearly seeing that these villagers fit into like types. But in the original, like those types were definitely still there. You could definitely tell Pinky was a peppy villager, but like they would still say entirely unique things that like, and would have their own individual characterization. Where in like later games, a lot of that's just kind of gone.
Yeah, and
So that's why
I
really
kind of agree with a lot of that. Though I will say, I gotta be fair, I did not play any of the classic games past about 2 weeks. And I usually, apart from like in the beginning, I only played about 2 hours of it. I fully agree that as far as like villager personalities, this one is the best. Just because of how bombastic the villagers can be and how much of a freaking savage Tom Nook is in the tutorial.
Yeah.
Like the sad part is he's still better than your average bankster or loner. Because,
Oh no, he's not gonna take out your kneecaps.
Yeah, it only makes you
put
work
you
part
an
time.
endless amount of that.
He only makes you work part time at his store for like an hour. That being said, for me it felt like a lot of these classic ones, it just gets too repetitive a bit too soon. I will say I'm a bit spoiled on that because I did start with New Horizons. And that's the one I put the most time into. But as far as the classics go, I will agree the GameCube is definitely the best. I would probably put it as a high regarded B, but that's just personally. So I think an A rank for it's pretty fair.
Between both of us, an A rank, yeah, that's a decent compromise.
Yeah, I did like to find some of the other events that would pop up occasionally interesting as well. Like, why are we all of a sudden washing this hoity-toity giraffe's car? It's like that came out of nowhere.
Gracie is a legend.
All right, now
you just gotta wash the car.
Yup. All right, now am I right in saying you did not play the DS game?
Not very much of it. I have played about as much of the DS game as I've gotten the impression from what you just said of like the original Animal Crossing. I've played the DS game for like a total of 3 hours. It did not really hook me.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It's just in comparison to having played New Leaf, I feel it really pales in comparison to New Leaf, and it's really difficult to justify playing it when I could just play New Leaf instead, for me. Um,
I would say
did you
that
get
about the
any
same
time with
game.
it?
Yeah, I put about 2 weeks into it. I would say my issue was that it came around about the same time as City Folk, and it's basically the same game but with less content. Like, I get it. It was a DS game. There had to be some sacrifices, but reducing the amount of villagers to 8, getting rid of their bombastic personalities for the most part, although Mr. Rossetti can still be a Giga Chat at times. Um, just it's like, why would I play this when I could play City Folk? Other than like if I wanted a handheld experience, but like changing the cartridge out for that game just doesn't seem even worth it to do that. So I would personally put it as a D tier. It's not terrible, but it's just nothing is interesting in it for me.
I feel like it is somewhat worth noting that around the same time is accurate, but there was 3 years between the two of them.
Was it really that much?
Yeah, there were 3 years. So like to my extent, that's somewhat justified. That like Animal Crossing City Folk does kind of feel like an upgrade version of a Wild World, but again, it's like essentially the direct sequel to it on a home console. So like, it makes sense to me. It kind of feels like definitely sort of like, yeah, of course the sequel does a lot of things better to me, but I know it definitely like because of how that time period was, kind of. It feels like a lot of the DS era gets pretty put together with the Wii because the DS didn't really pick up until like 2006, 2007, really.
Yeah, fair enough. Where would you put it then? Just based on the little time you did put into it.
Personally, I would put it in at a C tier. I think there are some things I would also be fine with high D. Not that we have anything else.
We'll stick it in C. We'll stick it in C for now and see if we want to change that later, because I get the feeling we will. Now, as far as City Folk Skull, we've pretty much said all there is to say about that one. I feel it's basically just Wild World, but on a home console and with more content.
Yeah, and they didn't. The holidays are existent.
Yeah, and I feel if I was going to go back between the two, I would probably go back to it before Wild World at any time, but I would not go back to it over the originals. So I'm thinking it would also be a C, but above Wild World.
Yeah, I kind of feel that too. I definitely see why a lot of people, because I know there's still quite a lot of people who still feel rather attached to that one, and it definitely has its own unique personality. I don't feel like anything in any of the following games really matches the feel of going to the city in City Folk. Like we definitely have similar things. New Horizons has Harv's Island that really picked up with the updates, and then New Leaf has Main Street, of course.
Yeah,
so it's like we've definitely seen evolution of that concept, but it's like it still feels like
there's no reason to go back to it, really, because of that.
I still feel like the scope of the city is something a bit bigger and a bit more special that we haven't quite gone something with like the same sort of scope in that regard.
Yeah, as far as side areas you can go to, that's definitely true. Now, next, since we're gonna have some interesting differing opinions on New Horizons and New Leaf, so we'll go ahead and save those for last. Instead, going on one that's like should be easy to eviscerate, Amiibo Festival. Have you actually played it?
Oh yeah, I've actually played it. It came out on it either came out around or like on the same time as my birthday when it released, so I ended up picking it up with birthday.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a birthday gift, and it was not very good as it's been.
Yeah, I picked it up for about $10 at the game shop and got the Mr. Rossetti amiibo on the cheap just so I could play the damn thing. I know a lot of people are gonna like go along with, say, I don't know, Scott the Waz's take on Amiibo Festival. I don't consider it a quote-unquote dark age game. I don't think it's as bad as people make it to be. There are some things about that are kind of interesting. I kind of like the fact that each panel has a little Animal Crossing event that goes into it. So it shows there was some soul put into it. But the fact that you have to have an amiibo just to play it makes it difficult to play with other people as well. And just getting rid of, like, say, all the mini games entirely kind of kills the point of it being essentially, you know, having that Mario Party appeal to it instead of just, so this is just a board game. I don't think it's an F tier, but I would be okay with a D.
Yeah, I could see D. There's definitely some worthwhile parts of it, even though honestly I feel like the main reason to go back to it, which would be that desert island survival mini game, because that was really solid.
Yeah, that was interesting.
That ended up in New Leaf thanks to the Welcome Meepo update. So like, there just isn't really much reason, in my opinion, to really go back to it after playing it once. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like, I'm sure if you get a group of friends, it can be a fun, or at least a sort of fun experience one time, but it's
there's
not something
unless you just want to
wanna...
see the different events, there's not much reason to go back to it.
No.
Anyways,
especially how long each like individual game can be.
Yeah, that is true.
It's like 90 minutes in some cases to get through, because like it's like get through the month you're in. So that's just, that drags.
It does.
So yeah, but moving on.
This was my first experience with Animal Crossing was Pocket Camp. It wasn't a particularly good one, and that was probably my mistake. But I think as far as a mobile game is, it's not terrible, but it's, oh man, is it not a good first impression of Animal Crossing.
I feel like I would put it at a kind of like beneath both City Folk and Wild World, but still within the C tier personally, because it's like, it's not great, but for what it does, I can see a certain type of Animal Crossing fan being pretty darn content with it. I mean, sadly, me wanting villager interactions, Pocket Camp ain't really the game for that either, but I don't know if you've gone and looked at other people's camps on that game fairly often, but there's a lot you can do with the furniture available.
Yeah, which
even
kind
if some of it's behind paywalls, so it's like there's a, if you're really into, you know, like decorating the houses and stuff, this is a nice way to get that fix on the go, and I'm sure you can have quite a lot of fun with it. I mean, I had a decent amount of fun with it with the short amount of time I played it for, so.
Yeah, I mean, my view on it is it did introduce some of those things, and there is a fair amount of content in it. It's not bad for a mobile game, and honestly, it does kind of fit that niche a bit better than Wild World, because you can just pull it out, play it for a few minutes, and put it away without having to worry about, you know, saving properly or taking the cartridge out, swapping it for someone else. Personally, I'd put it between City Folk and Wild World, but with your opinion, I'm okay just putting it at the bottom of C.
Yeah, I don't know if it like.
No, go ahead.
I don't know, like if I'm wanting to play, Wild World's gonna fill a different niche than Pocket Camp would for me. So like trying to play one instead of the other would be not very satisfying to me, which is kind of why Wild World being a more quote unquote proper Animal Crossing game kind of gives it the edge to me, because I feel like if I'm wanting the proper Animal Crossing experience and I try to play Pocket Camp instead of Wild World, I'm gonna like, if those are somehow my two options, which, man, how do I get into that position?
Yeah, that would be unfortunate.
But like, if those are my two options, I'm gonna be much happier with Wild World than I would be with Pocket Camp. So that's why, at least for me, it gets that edge. But I can definitely see you putting it between. I'm cool with either position.
We'll leave it there then. All right, so next we got the spin-off, which I'm still confused of why this got essentially a full-fledged retail release, was the Happy Home Designer on the 3DS. I have mixed feelings on what to do about this one. On one hand, it was kind of an interesting experience when it first came out, but on the other hand, that really should have been like a $15, 20, maybe $20 eShop title, since it doesn't really carry over things like, say, the Happy Home Paradise does. And unlike Happy Home Paradise, you're not filling out a map or anything like that. One thing I will say, this one has the edge over the other one, is just the fact that there's more facilities and you can expand them more than you can in Paradise. But other than that, I personally don't feel like there's any reason to go back to this one. I would honestly put it in a D tier.
Make the game for me entirely, and because of that alone, I feel there's reason to go back to it. Because as you just said, it's the degree in which the facilities within Happy Home Designer just isn't matched within Happy Home Paradise. So in that regard, the ways in which and I mean it's mostly probably just a me thing, but the ways in which the animals interact with the stuff you put down in a way they just didn't really in New Leaf, and they don't as much in some of New Horizons. I mean, there's definitely instances. They're definitely a lot better with that in New Horizons. But like coming from New Leaf, where like animals basically didn't really interact with the stuff around them, seeing them interact with the items around them and get to like seeing them in like a functioning school being kind of cute and adorable. I don't know, just like the cuteness factor of that really sold the game.
Yeah.
So like for me personally, I would kind of put it at B tier, but that's mostly just nostalgia talking.
That's a fair point. It's just I agree fully the facilities are better in general in this one, although I think you can permanently like set people as staffing in the Home Paradise, but you can't in this one. And to me, that was a bit lackluster. But other than that, yeah, I agree the facilities are better. But just the fact that you don't have a goal to work, you never have a goal to work towards. And like I said before, you're not filling out a map. You're not trying to get KK Slider there. I don't know. It just this maybe it's fair because I played it after Happy Home Paradise. That just I don't really feel that good about this one.
No,
I think
I'm cool with, although
I think a C rank would be a way to split our twins.
I think we can put it at bottom of C. I'm cool with
I would put it above Pocket Camp.
Okay.
So, next we have the Switch DLC, Happy Home Paradise. We've already compared the two a fair amount. I don't really have anything else to add that we haven't already talked about.
Generally, it's an upgrade over Happy Home Designer, and in a lot of regards, the ways in which it's an upgrade is mostly in the fashions of which it connects to the New Horizons game itself, which, of course, Happy Home Designer couldn't really do being a standalone experience, but I feel like it just really takes the foundation Happy Home Designer set and really did something with it that makes it feel... Again, it gave as you just noted, it gave it purpose that Happy Home Designer didn't really have. Happy Home Designer, you were really just playing to just design things. So, like, if you really liked, essentially making doll houses and playing with dolls, essentially, which I don't mean that in, like, a derogative or...
Of course not. It
sort
makes
of, like,
perfect sense what you're saying.
I could have a grand old time playing with dolls. Like, I don't mean to be, like, lesser anyone who enjoys that, because, again, I had quite fun playing Happy Home Designer and essentially playing with dolls, but there's not a whole lot more to that game outside of that. And in this regard, Happy Home Designer has more to it that impacts the game. So, like, yeah, I would definitely put it above. To me, it kind of sits at like high C, maybe even low B. Not that we have anything else in B at the moment, so low B is just B.
I would honestly put this one at a low A, but so I think it's okay to split the difference and just stick it in B. But I really like the fact that they followed kind of the same thing that New Horizons does in giving you a goal to work towards, both in filling out the map and getting KK on the island. And once you do that, you can set your own goal, keep working towards getting money to buy all the furniture from there for your main island, or just fill out the map. Whatever. I personally think it's the better experience. Now then.
Yeah, I think I can totally agree with that.
Now then,
overall better experience.
One of these last two games is going to get the S, and I know we both have strong opinions on which one it is. So instead of talking,
I don't really feel like either of them deserve an S, from my position.
Oh, really?
No, like if the OG Animal Crossing sits at A, then I don't really feel like either of them.
All right, that's fine. Either way, one of those is going to be at least be an A.
One
then.
of them's going to be up. Well, one of them's probably going to be up at the top of the list. I think you're right.
Yeah,
One of them
so
is probably at the end you're gonna...
I think to do that, instead of just covering them individually, I think since I know which camp you sit on, you know which camp I sit in, I think maybe it'd be better just make a case of which one of these two deserves that high spot. And
It's kind of...
I'll go first since you covered the original and you feel that one deserves the S, which I will respect. But for me, the reason I think Horizons deserves it, I like how the game opened up, forcing you to be in this little rinky-dinky tent after picking out an island. The presentation of it was pretty good in my opinion. It looks great. The fact that you can have that Animal Crossing experience but have it streamlined a bit, like not having to have one pocket space open for each individual apple, saves me time. It's just the game in general feels like it respects the player's time a bit more than the older ones did, with all these quality of life improvements, and the fact that it weighs heavily into the designer aspect, so I can design my island however I want, as well as have that original Animal Crossing experience of interacting with villagers. Now, I fully agree that the villager interaction pales in comparison to the original, because of how much it sticks to archetypes. And honestly, some of the content that was added in an update should have been there and launched, although I don't agree that with the people that saying it's an unfinished game. It clearly was.
It was 100% a finished game at launch. From my point of view, like, the main argument I consistently see, or like the big thing people bring out about it not being a finished game at launch, is because the holidays weren't in there. And like the reason the holidays weren't in there was because they didn't want people time travel, or well, at least they never outright said in interviews, so this is still just an assumption. But at least my headcanon is essentially that they didn't want people time traveling to the holidays, and they want the holidays to be more of this, like, more of a community event. And it definitely felt with how the holidays were set up, they were trying to make them more of a community event. So I feel like it somewhat tracks in my head. Like, so like, but that's the main argument I usually hear against it. It's like, well, they didn't have all the holidays in at launch, so clearly they just hadn't finished a lot of the holidays. And we can't know that for sure. That may very well be true. They didn't have all the holidays finished. But like, at least from my perspective, you know, by the time the holiday came, we had the holiday. And that's what matters. So it's like, it felt at the time complete to me. And I don't necessarily feel like I got like snubbed. You know, because like the majority of my time playing the game was back in March of 2020. And I don't really necessarily feel like I got snubbed going back to the game now and be like, oh man, I wish I had played it when it had all this content. Like, it's a decent amount of extra content, but it's not like super game changing either. It's just kind of more things to do within the day-to-day loop, which is what you want out of additional Animal Crossing content, but it also isn't, like, changing the way I view the game, really, in any particular light.
Plus, I really liked how they did the layout of the museum in New Horizons. Like, filling it out was actually kind of fun. I never completed it, nor will I ever, even if the paintings weren't a freaking thing. Though it is kind of weird that they just dropped the words is failing me. The observatory from it. Granted, I think that was kind of a silly thing to begin with. But, you know, I guess the fact that Celeste now wanders around so you can't just hit on her like you could in those two games. Wink. But, I don't know. Maybe I'm just also a bit biased since that was my first, and I also played it in a time when I really needed it. Not because I was locked down. I was actively out working during the COVID restrictions. But I was not in a good place mentally, and that kind of relaxation was really what I needed. So I will admit I'm definitely more biased towards that game, partially because of that, and that's why that's the only one I put in like 100 hours into, instead of the other ones just like, you know, 2 in-games weeks worth at like 1 hour intervals. That's why I feel this one's deserves to be at the top. Now, I know you love... one of your favorite ones was the New Leaf on the 3DS. You've heard my argument from New Horizons. Tell me why you really liked playing New Leaf as much as you did.
I feel like I kind of have to, in trying to get my opinion across about both games, kind of have to put it in context of in the context of why I feel the way I do about New Horizons, because like much like you, New Leaf was also my introduction, or well, I mean, much like how New Horizons was your introduction, New Leaf was also my introduction to the series. And while now I know from having played the GameCube game that the villager dialogue is certainly a downgrade from that, at that time, that was still enough of a hook to me back when I picked up the game in, like, I think winter 2014. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, early 2014. Yeah, so like back when I picked it up initially in 2014, that was what really sold me on the game. And in other regards, I know we haven't really talked about um, it much in regards to the game, but I think New Leaf's soundtrack is really solid. I feel like it doesn't, like a lot of the other games, I feel like have some duds within the hourly tracks. New Horizons, kind of especially to me, feels like it has some hourly tracks that are either just really bad or really forgettable. Not
Yeah,
to say that New Horizons doesn't have its fair share of really good ones. We get to 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening in New Horizons, and I'm just bopping the entire time. Like I'm just having a grand old time. Come 5 or 6, 5, 6, 7, and I'm having the time of my life. But like outside of the evening tracks, which I really enjoyed, it just kind of feels like a lot of them don't really stick with me as much as New Leaf. And again, a lot of that does have to do with the fact that it was New Leaf was my introduction to the series. It's what I still have a decent amount of nostalgia for. It is probably the Animal Crossing game I have the most nostalgia for. So it's, in some degrees I can't fairly separate the two. Maybe it is the only reason. Maybe I mean, we can never quite look at music as some objective sense because that's very personal taste sort of
yeah, and
viewed from
I do like New
perception, but
Horizons OST, but I don't really have much nostalgia or much, I don't know, attachment to really any of them, since they're just kind of there to me.
mm,
Granted, I know you like the original Animal Crossing's OST, and I'm just sitting there like,
2
what is
a.m.
this 2 a.m. music? Because I heard that
2
once,
a.m.
and just
is
like,
great.
what is this? What is this?
The
How
fucking
is,
trumpets.
what is this about 2 a.m.? Just like, what are you
It
trying to like
has
wake me the
nothing to
hell up?
do with 2 a.m. No, that's what makes it so great. It's so like so fucking random.
It is.
No, it doesn't fucking fit in 2 a.m. at all. I 100% agree. A lot of the I feel like New Leaf especially really nails the early morning tracks. It really just gives that sense of just like slight eeriness. It never feels like creepy, but it feels just like, man, it's early morning. There isn't really anyone about at that time. There's not really villagers wandering around, so you definitely get the feeling of just kind of like, I probably really shouldn't be doing anything right now.
And it's just, what is that? What is this music?
But fucking Animal Crossing 2 a.m. is just amazing. I love that track for how random it is, especially if you listen to like the GameCube's 1 a.m. track as well. It kind of feels like it just kind of feels like you get into like kind of like club vibes a bit. It's just like you're really vibing at the club, and then come 2 a.m. the trumpets come in, and then by
It's like,
3 a.m. you should be going the fuck home.
it's like, what did I just walk into?
No, for real.
Yeah,
But it's just in regards to the OST, it really fits for me, and I mean, I really enjoy a lot of the setup for it. A lot of it's day to day. The general gameplay loop you have, because I feel like it ends up feeling really solid. Something I really miss from New Leaf that is like kind of present in New Horizons, but not as much as the villager requests, because essentially the Nook Miles challenges replace those.
yeah. I think that was a
But
nice
like
addition,
the
personally.
villager requests, I don't know. To me, I feel like given that you got furniture items or clothing from villager requests, you don't really get from the Nook Miles. I feel like it's just kind of like I felt like both could coexist, and I mean there are still animal requests in New Horizons, but they're just so far and few between. Like you're gonna be lucky if you receive one just
Yeah.
once a day. Nonetheless, like back in New Leaf when they were pretty consistent, when you could probably go around and like if you didn't have anything to do your routines, which is a shame because I was really back before New Horizons launch. I was really looking forward to the idea of the Nook Miles challenges because something I felt like none of the Animal Crossing games had really done was like give you reason to play more than a couple hours a day, which I know is a weird thing because that's kind of like the whole point is you just play for a couple hours a day, but it's just kind of felt like, you know, if with every game up until New Horizons, you would reach a point where you just didn't have anything else to do for the
Yep.
day. Like you were just kind of done for the day. There wasn't really, especially once you got your house upgraded, like there wasn't any reason to like grind for bells or anything. You were just kind of like done. So if you, for whatever reason, you just wanted to chill and play more Animal Crossing, there came a point where all you could just do was sit on a bench and vibe, I guess. So I was really
Yeah.
looking forward to Nook Miles giving you the opportunity because the way of those, how those challenges work is they just keep cycling. So you just keep having stuff to do and stuff to work towards. But there isn't a whole lot to spend the Nook Miles on at the end of the day. Like they got the cycling stuff. Like there's a I
There are
assume there
some
isn't a whole
expensive
lot
items
when
in that
there's like
shop, though.
hundreds of items you can get from it. So like that's basically lying by me saying there's not a whole lot, but it's like it's still separated from the regular furniture items for the most part, which kind of makes it. I just end up feeling a bit difficult working towards it.
Yeah, and that's entirely
It's
fair.
just like there's not as much stuff that I really want. So just at the end of the day, it's just kind of like, okay, my incentive for playing the game additionally doesn't really work towards anything I'm really wanting to get. So it's kind of unfortunate. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's just like,
there was definitely a point I hit where I just stopped paying attention to the miles as well.
yeah, it's just, and like, in that regard, you know, that was something I was really looking forward to. That, like, I mean, it certainly does a better job New Leaf in that regard, but doesn't quite hit the landing in that. But I still feel like
It was
at
still
the
a
end of
nice
the
extra
day,
thing to
New
do.
Leaf is still sort of like the animal requests can really keep you going for a while, given how consistent they can be. Like you can go around and do those for a bit. So like even then, there's stuff for you to do. There's stuff for you to work towards. It feels like it was. Now my perception on this is super jarred because it took me like most of a year to put in 300 hours into Animal Crossing New Leaf, wherein like the majority of the time I put into New Horizons, which was like pretty close to 300 hours itself, was during March of 2020.
Hmm.
So my perception on how the progression in that regard is going to be super fucking skewed. But it felt like there was in New Leaf more stuff to work towards for a longer amount of time than there really was in New Horizons. And again, also part to thanks to I was playing it in March and they didn't have the stuff added from Harv's Island, which kind of takes up some of like the Main Street stuff. It's like it took a bit to in New Leaf to unlock the hair salon, to unlock the fortune shop especially,
Oh
because you had to
yeah,
just basically wait.
I think there was at least one shop I didn't even unlock in New Leaf. I got to also make the statement that I did play New Leaf a fair amount longer than I did any of the classics, nowhere near New Horizons, but part of that was because I got screwed by bells, or not by bells, the um what are those things you buy? Turnips. I got screwed by the turnips because
Turnips.
I got a decent starting price, but then the stock market just crashed completely for the rest of the freaking week
Joan
at like 20 or
Joan
30
was just
bells, and I'm just like,
not
no, I am
paying out.
done. I am done with that.
Yeah, no, and I guess I can't really talk and I mean, I almost forget in the shuffle, but I feel like I can't necessarily really talk about why I still really like New Leaf so much without referring to Tortimer's Island.
Oh yeah, I was
The
gonna make
fucking mini
if
games,
you were gonna make a point
like
of that, I was gonna make my point itself is just the fact that it has that, and the mini games are something that makes the multiplayer capability so much better than New Horizons, because the New
yeah,
Horizons, all you can really do is just island tours, or maybe, and that can only last like a day or two unless you want to use the timer for self-made
mm.
hide and seek. And
Or you could make other mini games as well. I know a lot of the YouTube content surrounding New
yeah, you can't
Horizons
do it as
for a
well, but
bit
it's
was a lot of
just
people doing their own mini games, but there is something to just having something more structured and having a reward system you could work
yeah,
towards and
because I
just
got bored of jumping on islands like a couple of days into doing that, even just before certain things happened. Because when we hopped onto my former teammates' island a couple times, just like, that was fun for a bit, but it's just, why are we still doing this? It's not particularly that special apart from raiding each other's shops. Although that one time where Naomi got her black flowers stolen still is something that I will always stay memorized, because that was funny. Freaking Moon pulled a fast one on that one.
Moon just steals all sorts of shit.
He does. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
this is
he's
something
just
I definitely have to simp
he's
for.
always usually pretty honest about it too, though.
Yeah, he
He's
did
he's
come
not
clean
like
eventually.
he's not malicious.
It was just a
It's like he
prank.
does he does like steal stuff, but it never quite feels malicious on his end. So it's just kind of like he's
And he
just kind of
wonders why I sent him a
just
bunch of
doing
jail
it for the
bars.
bit, doing it for the bit. Um,
Yeah,
but
that is
yeah,
one thing
all
I
in
gotta give
all,
to New Leaf, though.
if I could just put why I prefer New Leaf in, I guess, three succinct points. Better villager dialogue, more actual personality, although you could definitely feel the archetypes in New Leaf too. Like they were there. They were very much existent. Um, you got Tortimer's Island, and I just feel like the progression of New Leaf feels more gradual than New Horizons did for me. New Horizons felt like I could do most of what there was to like most of the goals to work to I could accomplish within New Horizons within a short amount of time. And again, that is probably very much based on the fact that I put 100 hours into it within a week, which I don't think is what I can continue to do.
And how many times did you fall asleep on that?
On New Leaf, many times. On New Horizons, I do not recall actually falling asleep on New Horizons, to be honest.
Yeah, for those that aren't in
But
the
on
know
New
how
Leaf, I fell asleep on quite often.
For those who aren't in the know how, my boy Ian here fell asleep on Discord multiple times while playing Animal Crossing to New Leaf.
There was a month in late 2017 where I fell asleep on Discord the entire month, every day for an entire month.
So
That
both
was
of
that was a fun time.
I still remember that. So both of us have our feelings of what each of these would be at the top of the list. I know you don't feel New Leaf would go above the original, but if you had to rank the opposite, where would you put New Horizons?
Um, I think I can come to put New Horizons up at the top, even up in S tier, because it's like Animal Crossing is a very personal thing. So for me personally, it doesn't really do it, but I can 100% see why for so many other people, it really is a fun and unforgettable experience.
Yeah, and even if it doesn't
So
do it, it
like,
does quite a bit of things right.
no, and yeah, and I can't ignore it. It didn't have the sticking power I would have liked it to have had for me. Again, I played it in March 2020, and then like after that, maybe put in a total of like 150 hours into it afterwards, which I know seems like a lot, but that was over like just like a couple months of time. Like I remember playing it in March, and then kind of consistently playing it throughout there, and eventually fizzling out come
Yeah, you fell
the
off
the
it.
summer
You fell
months.
off it before I did.
Yeah, and then I remember picking it back up again in like the fall of 2021. because of the DLC, and I played it for about a month again or so. But
Yeah,
then
that's
after
probably
the
about what I
DLC
put
came
into the
out,
DLC as well.
I fell pretty shortly after the DLC came out, and after I did what there was to do in the DLC, I kind of fell off of it. Which I mean also means, I didn't accomplish everything that was added within the final update. So there's still reason for me to go back if I ever want to, but it's just kind of like,
Yeah,
it definitely
I only
fizzled
really
out for me. Whereas when New Leaf had more of that grip, although even then, at the moment, I'm not playing any Animal Crossing game on a regular basis.
yeah, neither am I.
At the given moment. So none of these games really have quite the sticking power I would really like an Animal Crossing game to have. And in that regard, like outside of the villager dialogue, which is a really big sticking point for me, New Horizons has definitely come the closest to having that sort of sticking power, even though it fell short. It's like if they had gone the villager dialogue down, I think I would have very little complaints about the game outside of there not really being mini games. But
Yeah,
like I could get over that.
I would
It's just
probably
kind of
be
like the
saying the
double
same
whammy.
thing as well if I had played the original first over that, because that bombasticness, that was pretty entertaining.
No,
But
it's like Pinky will just start talking about the most random ass shit in the world, and you're like, goddamn, Pinky talking about Nintendo Power?
yeah, and how mad
What?
did you get when Pinky left your island?
Oh, this is a new leaf, but
Hmm.
yeah, Pinky just up one day, just up and left, and I was very sad.
And he
I
never got
really
her
liked
back
Pinky.
either. Especially
Nope,
since both
nope, I
me and
haven't.
Daryl, no, both me and Moon got Pinky on our New Horizons island.
Yeah, I haven't. I have a Pinky amiibo card now, so if I really wanted Pinky, I could have Pinky, but I haven't had Pinky on a Animal Crossing island since Pinky moved out in 20, probably like either late 2014, early 2015. It's been a minute, but Pinky's still up top for me. I really enjoyed the time I got to spend with Pinky.
Fair enough. We all got our favorite villagers. I would put Pinky up
But
there as
yeah,
well, but whatever.
hmm.
So where would you
But yeah,
put
outside of that,
where
I
would you
think
put New
I
Leaf
would
as a rank?
probably, if we're having New Horizons at S, I would put New Leaf below the original. But I could also see an argument for like it being above the original in
Yeah.
A. But I definitely think A
So you would
is
go
kind of
A
where
for
it
the. So
sits.
you would say A, but below the original.
Yeah, personally.
If I was gonna rank it, I would probably put it in B above the DLC. But since that means, like you said, it's a very personal thing, and you compromise giving that an S, I will gladly put that below the original in A.
Hmm.
So yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
our Animal
outside of that,
Crossing tier
I
list.
think I think it's a pretty decent stretch. I would say I think the only thing possible is I think we might have, just due to our general inexperience with both series, done the DS and Wii entries, City
Yeah,
Folk and
that's fair. I mean, do we want to
Wild
change
World a
any of
bit
these C
dirty.
ranks while we're here?
No, because I don't know anything enough to change any of the C ranks, or at least I feel like if I were to put more proper time into either Wild World or City Folk, I would come to at least see them as more B. But
Yeah,
I
probably.
haven't, so I kind of feel like we probably ended up doing them a bit dirty. But
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
one day
I
I'll
I fully admit
go
I
and
didn't put
actually
that much
play
time into it
those.
either. Yeah, the only thing I would change is maybe downgrade Pocket Camp to a D, but I don't really feel like doing that.
But
Um,
yeah, Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival
I
definitely puts her
hope
at the bottom.
I
Hi,
hope
Animal
we
Crossing Amiibo
eventually give
Festival.
this series another spin-off like Amiibo Festival, but like not do it like that. Not force us to use amiibos, and make it more of a game. Like maybe something like the
I would
Find Me or something,
actually
but with Animal Crossing villagers.
no actually, cause the part of the development history of the game was it evolved from an RPG, but they determined that while playing the RPG, that the party members were far more interesting to interact with than playing the actual game,
Hmm.
which is kind of how Animal Crossing came to be. So in some regards, I would be very happy to see an Animal Crossing RPG and going kind of full circle in that
Yeah, I
regard and
think if
coming
they
back
did
to
it
that
like Find
idea.
Me, it would work pretty well.
Yeah, especially since I think you can still
Or not
do it and
Find
have
Me. Why do I keep saying Find Me?
interacting
Metopia.
Metopia. Yeah, and like much like Metopia, make the interactions with the villagers or the interactions with your party members just like the main thing the game's about. Because Metopia as an RPG, like as a turn-based RPG, is
It's just
but like
okay.
it's all about the character and interactions. In that regard, I feel like you could really do something with Animal Crossing to make that interesting.
But
And
yeah,
it could be very much like, I mean, it would have to be very much like Metopia because I don't really see doing a Animal Crossing RPG without having the kind of like level of characters.
yeah, but even
You would
even
need
if we
to
do
have
get
most of the villagers' presence.
even if we do get a spin-off, I think it's safe to say we're not going to see another Animal Crossing game period until, Switch 2 or whatever they end up calling it comes out.
Which I mean, I think we're probably a lot closer to the next Animal Crossing game than we realize.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if a good chunk of if Nogami and his team are already working on that. Then they definitely will be after side orders out.
Yeah, I definitely think. I mean, we haven't really heard any murmurings about it, so I'd be kind of surprised to see it per se. But like, I could definitely see Animal Crossing as a Switch successor launch title doing pretty well, especially if it's like, with how stunning New Horizons can look at times. I feel like you could like make an Animal Crossing game that really pops out and really gets, I feel like if you were going to sort of, I feel like Animal Crossing would be like the best game for Nintendo to like show up graphic fidelity and like have it appeal to most the have it appeal to the largest amount of people in that regard. Because like I kind of like, at least for me, and this is kind of going way off base for the fucking Animal Crossing tier list, but like with how Metroid Prime 4 is ended up, it really feels like Metroid Prime 4 is probably more suited as a Switch successor title at this point
Which a
than
lot of people are speculating on.
actually ending up on a Switch, which I could definitely see them doing that with how Metroid Prime remastering it coming up, because that game's stunning on Switch. I could see them trying to position that as also just kind of like, hey, look how stunning this game is. But I feel like Animal Crossing would appeal to. I mean, I love Metroid, but like Animal Crossing would just appeal to so many more people in that regard than a Metroid game would. I mean, I think a Metroid game could look as pretty as it wants to, but I don't think a Metroid game is ever going to really see the level of success that they would want out of a really solid launch title. See that same level of success as like a Mario or a Zelda.
Yep.
But I think Animal Crossing could definitely do that at this point. I think even Splatoon could do that
Yeah. Oh
at this
yeah. I
point if
said
you
it
made
before and
like
I'll
a
say it
really
again.
stunning.
Splatoon and Animal Crossing. Although to be fair, part of Animal Crossing's jumping into this category is because of when the game came out and what it was when it came out. But Animal Crossing and Splatoon are probably both the closest Nintendo will have to having another big four. Big four being Mario, Smash Bros, Zelda, and oh yeah, Pokemon. Duh, of course, can't forget that one. But yeah, this is what we got for Animal Crossing. I'm hoping to have Ian on for another one of these, not too in the not too distant future. I'm planning.
We should just consistently do smaller ones. That would be funny to me.
Well, the next one I'm planning on with you is going to be a smaller one. I'm hoping to do Monkey Ball, because yeah, that'll be an interesting one. Other than that,
That will be an interesting one.
I'm hoping to do one for Sonic, a couple for Mario, since there's so many of them. We'll need to split that between spin-offs and main games, and then I'm also hoping to do one with Kirby because that one should be interesting, because we have someone who's a longtime fan and player of the series, and someone who's mostly a newcomer to it, who's only played through binge played through the games in the last year.
Fine.
But yeah, this is Trigger Gaming signing off, and NTDOSplat Ian as well. I will give him a link to his Twitter below, so give him a follow if you want and see what he's got going.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to edit that one out.